Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Stately Office Hours. We're hoping there might be a few more of you this week, as we've got quite a few more followers on Twitter at the moment. This is where every week, the Stately team gets together. We talk about all things Stately, all things XState, let you know what we've been working on, get feedback from you, and answer your questions. If you have any questions, you can let us know in the YouTube comments. You can at us on Twitter. Or if you are particularly discerning, you can join our Discord, and that is at discord.gg/xday. And there we have a dedicated office hours channel. And you can ask your questions in there. I'll be keeping an eye out all the way through. Now, what we do every week is we start off by introducing the team and who we are, so you know why we're here and what we talk about. So my name is Laura, and I do developer and designer relations for Stately. Next up, David.
Hey, I'm David Corshit, creator of XState and founder or orchestrator of this whole thing. I'm going to start using actor model terms. We'll have fun with this.
Okay, that'll put everyone else on the spot as well. How about you, Matt?
Yeah, I don't know enough about the actor model to. I am just an event receiver or receptionist at Stately, I guess. And I receive, make code events, and I make code.
Okay, I'm going to follow round by going down next to Farzad. Who are you?
Hey all, Farzad here. I do engineering at Stately.
And next to Matthias.
Hi, I'm Andres from Twitter. I'm a junior developer here, junior JavaScript developer and a TypeScript trickster. So I just try to type it out, everything that you put into your machines.
Still with this junior rubbish, honestly.
And finally, we have a new face this week, and we're really excited to introduce you to Gavin. Gavin, would you introduce yourself to the folks watching the stream?
Sure thing. Hey, everybody. My name's Gavin Bowman. I'm, like Laura mentioned, I'm the new guy on the block. I'm a back-end engineer by trade. Yeah, I'm stoked to be here. Very excited. Just closed out. Has it been 2 weeks? Week and a half?
I think so. Time flew.
Yes, it did.
It's been a very busy week. And David, how come Gavin's here?
Yeah, why'd you hire me? What do I do?
So for those who don't know, which is probably most people anyway, Gavin and I have worked together at Microsoft, and I've had the pleasure of working with him on so many projects. And to give you an idea, the projects we work on at Microsoft are always varied and different. There's not even a guarantee of like which programming language we'll be using. I mean, we've touched Scala, C#, Python, like just Go, of course, like just a whole ton of things. Worked on infrastructure, just a whole bunch of stuff. Infrastructure is the only thing I could think of, just because we were in infrastructure hell for like the last, year or so. But anyway, we're really excited to have Gavin join the team because he's going to be working and pretty much leading the architecture on an upcoming workflow engine that we're working on. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that. And we'll have more news for you in the future on that.
That sounds great.
Fantastic.
Makes me sound like a mysterious just a trump card there. So I like that.
Yeah. Gavin's here. We don't quite know why yet. Ooh, what's going on? Love it.
And this week we had, in case you missed it, the launch of the public beta of the Stately editor. And I think it went pretty well. What do you lot think?
Oh, it was fantastic. Yeah. We love, just seeing how many people, started using it, and just even people who haven't used it yet, but were just really excited for something like this, as if it was something that's like really very much needed. And we have been, just working super hard on it for the last 6 months. I had the first ideas for this like even years ago, made some dirty prototypes, and maybe one day I'll just have like a Twitter thread on just like the ugly prototypes I've made of it. But yeah, the entire team is just extremely talented and has been pouring all of their talent and hard work into this. So it felt really, really good for us to just finally launch it and, or at least launch the beta and let you all get your hands on it. And the feedback we've been receiving is pretty good so far. So, yeah.
Yeah,
it's
we've
pretty
got even
exciting.
more coming today. Sorry, Matt, you go.
No, I was just going to say it's pretty exciting. You can even just try out what we've been building just by going to this link, State AI Editor. Don't even need to sign in. You can just start playing around with everything and messing about with building state charts. Download the VS Code extension, all that good stuff.
So that's stately.ai/editor. Thank you for adding that banner. I'm assuming it was Matt. Now, we have some questions this week from Horacio, who was very organized and got to us well ahead of time on the Discord and the Office Hours channel in there. And so I thought we could kick off by answering those. And so Horacio says, question for the next Office Hours. When you start creating machines in your apps, but you have 2 or more machines that are fairly similar with subtle differences, what key factors drive you to refactor and create just one machine? So I guess it's a modeling question.
Yeah, it is a modeling question. And with all modeling questions, this, it very much depends on you and your team. Like there's many ways to do it. And it's something we've actually been talking about internally and also in the ideas channel is just like, how do you take a machine and like just extend it or change certain parts of it? And Matt actually had a bunch of ideas around this, so I'll let him talk.
Yeah, sure. In terms of Horatio's question, it's pretty similar to when you have 2 very similar looking functions. You have a function which looks like this, which does a plus b, whatever, and you have a function which looks like this, which is like a plus b plus 1. And what key factors drive you to refactor and create one function will be very similar to what you do with your machines too. In terms of what David's mentioning, kind of composability of machines, like this is a huge topic where you can bring in like spawning machines, which I know Horatio knows about, invoking machines, which are machines which are kind of tied to one state in your state charts, and even kind of like pulling in different parts of states in having a pending state that has to invoke a certain invoke, has to do this, blah, 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 has certain behavior. So you can kind of mix and match states around as well. But yeah, I know that Horatio knows a lot about that stuff, and we don't have any kind of really strong recommendations for that. So it's kind of nice to just lay the table with all the other options. Anyone else got any more kind of chats on that?
I can add that as you guys said, we talked about this a lot of times, right? And I think we kind of concluded that it's always challenging when you have similar functionalities, but with different constraints, right? And as you said, Matt, it's really, really similar to when you have 2 almost the same looking functions. And it's usually a recipe for the leaky abstractions if you try to abstract it into one simple thing that tries to do 2 similar things at once. So I would say it's just a trade-off, accept it whatever you need to, or don't do it. But it's a little bit different than composability in a sense that composition means you can break it into different concerns and use like the actor model, spawning actors, or nested states, or invoking machines, whatever, and add or remove features or extend the current behavior. But this is more or less just how the ugly, it's always ugly. That's what I'm trying to say. There is no right answer for this. And the most challenging thing about it is that it gets even uglier when you have 2 machines that have to have very, very similar, almost the same looking state structure, but a little bit difference in the way you structure your states. If it's a difference in the context or configuration, that problem is solved already. But if it's a state structure change, then that's very, very challenging.
And usually when you have 2 different machines, they behave different logically. There's a logical difference between them. Whereas you can share things in state machines like, actions which are shared between states. I know that I have a useful invoke which kind of like prevents the browser from being unloaded while you've got a pending fetch or something, which is very, very useful. And I share that all over the place. So yeah, if probably you should avoid these kind of hasty abstractions, and not go too heavy on making one machine to rule them all, and just spread it out between the dwarves and the elves and stuff, and just do what they want. You get the idea. Any Lord of the Rings fans here? No. Okay, cool.
And so Horacio had another question as well. Is there any examples or recommendation when testing machines that receive events from outside the actual component they are invoked? Example, I have a side panel on my app that you can add stuff to it. Those events to add, remove stuff are fired from other parts of the app, other components. Should I test this kind of interaction in an end-to-end setting? Or how can I send those events and test just the side panel? Some context. The side panel has its own machine. Each element added to the side panel is also another machine and are spawned by the parent machine. Maybe this question could be summarized on comments on how to test complex systems, taking advantage of state machines and possibly using model-based testing. So I know we have discussed quite briefly model-based testing in previous office hours, and I'll make sure I include a link to those in this office hours in the show notes, the bit at the bottom.
Whenever
I gotta say,
sorry, go.
Yeah, I just wanted to say it's a very, very complex structure for just a side panel. Just food for thought.
Yeah, this could be too complex. What I would say is whenever I have a question about testing, I always ask Mateusz. So I'm kind of interested in what Mateusz has to say about this. This kind of like, it depends on where you want. It feels more like a question about where the seams of your app are and what you want to test kind of end to end, as opposed to what you want to test unit test. I don't know. What do you think, Mateusz?
Yeah, but basically that, like, there are different schools of testing, so it all depends on like what kind of testing strategy do you prefer in your app, and like which one do you lean towards like more. I'm probably more of a guy who prefers end-to-end tests because I tend to refactor stuff somewhat often in like to accommodate new requirements or just to fix bugs and so on, and like unit tests for applications are somewhat for me like breaking too often for them to be useful, in my opinion. Like unit tests for like isolated modules and so on are cool, but in the application setting they are often a little bit too much, in my opinion. Unless you really have like a reusable component that needs to be used from multiple places, or you have a component library and so on, then like some like user-driven unit tests it can be good, like written in a like user-driven format. So for example, like React testing library instead of enzyme and stuff like this. But if something is very complex to test in end-to-end test, then it might be useful to reach out for a unit, because end-to-end tests are also have their flaws and so on, and it might be much harder to replicate some edge cases and so on in such a setup. But if you already have such a setup and you prefer to test those with like more unit tests, then I would say like just use that machine and just send events to it. It's in a way like just protocol for like providing some arguments to a long-running process. So it doesn't matter that much like where do you run it really. If you want to isolate the side panel and just test it in isolation from the other parts of the app, you can still do that, and you need to only adjust like its protocol, just like that other component does it in the real app.
Yeah, since working at Stately and listening to Andres talk about this stuff, I'm sort of the opinion that kind of testing at the higher level for front-end applications, sort of as high as you can, or as high that's useful and not flaky, is mostly the way to go.
Yeah, I want to address one thing quickly. Horacio asked, why do you think this is too complex? And to be fair, we don't have all the information on like what your side panel does, like all the parts of your side panel. It could be that having spawn machines for each part is actually necessary, just depending on the complexity of like what you're trying to do. So yeah, we would need more details on that. And of course, if you're comfortable, spawning and invoking machines, then then definitely go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, just to clarify, the reason I said that it sounds a little bit more complex for a side panel was not to kind of downplay the side panel itself, but rather I've never reached out for breaking to too many actors myself. I don't see the need. That's why I said it's too complex of a structure.
So we had another question from the Discord just now that I think follows up from some of the things that we've been talking about in terms of modeling. And Arthur says, I've been thinking about writing an XState style guide for my dev team, how to name things, model machines, etc. Do you use something like this? I mean, I'd love something like this.
Yeah. So personally on the team, we don't use something like this, at least not yet, but this is definitely something that would be really good to have. Not something where it's like a strict linter and it's going to yell at you if you don't camel case or, screaming underscore case your event names or anything like that. But it's good to have consistency. I know, for example, Matt has the style of basically writing English prose, I would call it, and having those as, states and events. And, that's very, I guess, friendly to, just being able to understand exactly what it does. And thankfully with VS Code, you have autocomplete, so you don't have to type it out all the time. But yeah, different people have different conventions, and having some sort of consistency is really good. And so this is something that we could consider in the future for us, and then maybe share our thoughts in the blog post on how other teams can adopt it. Eric says screaming underscore case. Yeah, this has been pretty common with Redux, or at least in the past. And so I guess pretty much everyone adopted it just because it makes it visually clear what's an event and what's, just something else like a state, but I don't like it too much. I think I'm moving away from screaming underscore case for event names personally.
Yeah, when I was putting together XState catalog, sorry, I found myself sort of slipping into these things because I had to write 20 machines in a row or something. And so it would be camel case for state names and then screaming underscore case for event names. But when you think about it, it doesn't really make sense. You know what I mean? It's like both of them, you usually use like screaming snake case for constants, but they're both constants, right? Like the event name and the state name are constants, so it's just sort of arbitrary. So I've started using, sentence case, let's say, for just communicating events, and it looks really good in the editor as well. It just looks like someone has built something natural, and it works quite well. So the thing that really interests me about this question is the kind of how to model machines as a style guide. I think that's really cool. Like when you've been doing it for a while, you just sort of pick up tricks, like moving through a transition state in order to run some guards or something like that. That's a really nice little pattern. And so I guess a patterns or XState tricks or something would be really useful, and especially for a team too.
Yeah, it'd be cool for us to work out what works for us as we go along. And going back to what you were saying about finding eventually that using sentence case was good and it worked well in the editor, it does make me think that I find sentence case much friendlier. And I think if you're trying to share what you're working on with members of the team who aren't necessarily developers, they don't necessarily understand the meaning of what case you're using. And sentence case is probably the least intimidating to read and to interact with. And you don't just suddenly think, oh, this is some sort of alien code thing.
Yeah, just be careful with punctuation and you're fine. No periods in the middle of sentences or, quotation marks,
Sentence case, no grammar concern.
Yep.
I have successfully built machines that work in the editor that are just using emoji though. Just saying.
Incredible.
That's amazing. I'm so glad that
does
works.
work.
So we'll add that to the tips and tricks guide. Emoji-based machine names. I'm totally down for this.
And we had a question in the comments from Scott saying, is version 5 going to have an easier way for child actors to communicate with one another? Or should we just continue the pattern of forwarding events to the parent and then back down to children?
So actually, Eric answered this pretty well. We are considering like it's called a receptionist pattern. And so the reason is it's not something that's just bolted on that we're like, oh yeah, this solves this problem. It's actually something that the more I research is actually a core part of the actor model. I'm reading a book from 1989 by Gul Aga, who is one of the original proponents of the actor model. And even he talks about like just this idea of a receptionist where actors can expose themselves as global so that other things can reference them from anywhere. So yeah, this is something we're definitely thinking about.
You can also just today, I guess it works better for spawned machines than for invoked ones, and this is probably something that we should address to kind of like make them more closer to each other, just so there wouldn't be such a difference. But for spawn machines, you can kind of like share that machine in an event from the parent to a child A, let's say, and then you can kind of like establish direct communication channel between them, because like the machine itself, like this actor ref created by Spawn is like an address, so you should be able to just target it with send and send an event to it directly, like bypassing parent. But it requires you to like share that, so it's never like implicit. You can't just reach for a random ref living somewhere. You need to like explicitly share that with a particular machine.
It's like putting your phone number in a phone book or something.
Yeah, but like even with V4, you can just use different services as interpreters. Like they're exactly like having different actors in the global registry. You just have different services and you send events to them.
Right, but the problem is
difference.
No, the problem is there is no global registry. So if you have like a grandchild who wants to talk to like a cousin or niece or nephew, whatever, like it's
also they want the entire actor tree. Okay, yeah, got it. Okay,
yeah.
So take that banner down now. We asked this week, we had a question of the week, which was, if she can get her keynote working, there we go. What features are on your wish list for the Stately editor? And we got quite a lot here. So what I'm thinking is we'll rattle through them fairly quickly. And what you can do is we can yay or nay, whether we're planning on doing it, whether we're not planning on doing it. Maybe a little bit why, but let's try and keep it pacey because otherwise we won't get through all of them today.
Yeah.
So first off, from TVAC, we had on our Discord inline action support, improve layout and improve layout for large machines. Once there's a lot of event connections, it gets very hard to read unless you spend a lot of time manually adjusting things. I also wish the connector logic would adjust the connected points a bit to favor straighter lines. So stuff like welcome to start didn't have that unnecessary jog in it, but that's very nitpicky. And I've just increased the size of that machine there, the example there, so you can see what he was talking about.
So yeah, yes to inline actions, yes to layout. And I actually had some ideas for making these lines prettier, just some heuristics for that. So yeah, that is coming soon, or not soon, but that is planned or planning to be planned. We're going to do it eventually.
Angelo says the ability to be able to group, ungroup, and move multiple states into nested compound states / unnested states. As a dev, this is trivial with the JavaScript, TypeScript, but makes life a bit tricky for a non-dev to play with state charts. I've heard many fellow state folk, I love that state folk, mention how cool this possibility of non-dev involvement could be. And then has an example of that. The simplicity of the manual sim process is a welcome feature, but personally feel some of the magic of state charts is lost when actions and guards are not automatically evaluated to demonstrate state flow. Is this too many at once? Should we just do those two first?
Yeah, just do that top one first, maybe.
Yeah.
The top one is sort of possible right now. Like you can select a load of them and then just cut them and then paste them inside another node. That's possible. So I'm not sure how we'd like improve on that unless we added like a button to wrap around it.
Right, or a keyboard shortcut where you could like pull state nodes out of appearance and drag and drop them into another one. I mean, these are advanced interactions that we are going to probably spend the next year experimenting with.
Or even like a context menu option or like a selection popover option or something.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but I like the drag and drop option, like making it drop zones smarter.
Yeah. So regarding simulation, there's a lot more we want to do with simulation, including actions and guards and dealing with events, payloads, and things like that. So there's a lot coming there.
We even talked about integrating the current inspector features into the editor as well, which will more or less do what's asked there.
Yeah, we want the simulation mode to be really really divorced from your code, basically just showing the logic. And so we want you to be able to select which guards go where and sort of just display the actions there. Otherwise, if it's too involved with your code, it gets a bit tricky.
And so this also covers Angelo's request for an editor sim API to send the current state object, context data, and receive events via WebSockets or REST hooks. You could then live demo a state chart working in a website, mobile, or desktop app inside Figma, a code sandbox, or IDE. Imagine all the plugins and features the community could contribute. Which I think everyone here would agree with that.
Cool. Yeah.
Totally. And collaboration online is something we're thinking of doing as well. And this feeds right into that.
And I've seen this request elsewhere as well. Perhaps change the action and guard text box control into a drop down of pre-written actions by the devs, or maybe even have a machine and event context only JavaScript sandbox editor for actions and guards. This could encourage best practice with state charts, as well as be able to demonstrate some of the magic.
Yeah, right now it's in raw text form. In the future, you're going to be able to pull from ones you define, pull from ones other people have defined, fill in parameters, stuff like that. That's all stuff that we've been thinking about.
Invoke from registry.
Yes, that's going to be a huge feature.
Mike C says they're after a standalone native desktop application that works without requiring internet connection. And I guess this is a security feature depending on the kinds of companies and premises you work on.
Yeah, that's a good idea, and we'll have to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And similarly, Angelo says, I appreciate how the plugin can stay up to date by using external services instead of building in the whole client with the plugin. That being said, it would suck to not be able to state chart on the plane. Caching would be awesome.
Yeah, that goes to the previous idea too. There's some things we have to work out in order to make that possible, but right now it's difficult to do.
One thing we could do is bundle the entire Stately editor in with the VS Code extension, which would be great, but we haven't quite got there yet.
That's significantly better than my idea of just pulling up a modal that allows you to sign up for GoGo in-flight wireless whenever you're trying to create state charts on the plane.
You're just striking deals with these dodgy airline Wi-Fi companies, aren't you?
I love that.
I mean, it's one way to make money. So John Lombardo said for his wish list, he would like editing the context and event types, visualize event payloads on transitions, populate the options parameter with action service, guard activity stubs, or function signatures.
Yep. All things these are things that we even have in the original designs. We just haven't gotten to yet, but they're all planned.
Yeah, the last one too is actually something that we do in VS Code, but just like one by one. We haven't. So it's all the code is there and written essentially, but we haven't done the stubs yet. I'm not sure if you'd want to opt in always to that or have that be a config option or something.
Might be worth, if anyone has any feedback on that, whether what they'd prefer and what they'd use, that might be useful for us to know. Just let us know in the Discord. Our friend JDA said, I would be excited to visualize and to a slightly lesser extent simulate multiple machines which work in concert simultaneously and in the same view. That's interesting.
Yeah. So I definitely have a lot of ideas around this too. And one of the old XState inspectors was actually doing this, where if you had like invoke machine, you could click that and jump to that machine. So this requires bigger thought, because this basically transforms the Stately editor into, I guess, a stately IDE of sorts, where you could have multiple tabs go between machines and be able to focus on one as the machines are receiving events and changing focus. Yeah, so there's some big ideas here, but this is definitely something we want to do. Also, generating sequence diagrams. I'll just throw in that idea too.
And another one from JDA saying, I would also find it convenient to serialize and rehydrate the state of a simulation via a link. It would be awesome to link from an application docs page to an interactive visualization of business logic. The TypeScript playground does linking beautifully.
Oh,
Yeah,
this would be
definitely.
awesome. Yeah.
Like embeds is something that we're really keen to do, and when you embed something, you in general don't want people to be able to edit it, so just embed it in simulation mode and let it play around. That'd be beautiful.
This will be Farzad's embedded mode part 2.
Exactly. Farzad gets all the long, complicated stuff to do.
I know we've discussed this one before. Edgar says the auto layout of the viz is really nice. Right now, the layouts on the editor are not presentable. I wish I could rearrange the lines to present it better.
So funny enough, we had this feature early on, and then we removed it, just because we wanted to be able to move edge labels freely. But again, I have some ideas for combining the two, so that's going to come in the future. We're also thinking about just redesigning the events to be more space conscious. Right now they're pretty big, which is nice to read, but when you have lots of states and everything, it becomes difficult. There's so many things related to this topic, including preventing overlapping, that we needed to. So yeah, this is something we want to do for sure.
Yeah, the story of the auto layout for this release was essentially how fast can we do auto layout so that it just about works? Because what we really wanted to focus on was the VS Code extension and getting that working, and we needed auto layout for that. So right now, auto layout is basically don't put the boxes on top of each other, make sure the events sort of work. And yeah, so we have plans to improve it a lot.
Greg Westneat says, I'm most eager for actors/services, pumped to explore composition and inversion of control patterns. Would also be neat to be able to start from templates pulled from the registry or something. Well, we've already talked about that. If there's any chance of simulating with connected React somehow, that would be heart eyes, smiley face.
Yeah, this is something that, the VS Code extension is sort of like a preview into the interaction between the code that lives in your app and the code that's visualized in real time. And so we definitely want to bring the capabilities of the inspector and visualizer over to the editor eventually. And again, we talked about actors and templates. That's something that we definitely want to prioritize, just so that you could learn how to create these state charts by example rather than by reading through the entire documentation. And I think we could all agree we need more examples.
Definitely.
Yeah,
I love the
we
second...
say it regularly.
Totally. On the last one too, I really like the idea of making simulation mode richer, like perhaps adding sort of like a loose sort of prototyping element onto it. So you can actually prototype something and walk through its state as you're going. Like that sounds really, really cool. And yeah, we've got plans on that.
Oh, how cool would it be if you build the collaboration mode with the prototyping mode in simulation at the same time, so that you can model your application while the designer of your team works on the prototypes at the same time?
Totally. It'd be like one of those keyframer streams where David is doing the machine and then I can't remember what your other keyframers guy is called. Is it Adam?
Stephen Shaw.
I just picked a random name out of the air. I had no idea what his name was. So Stephen does the front end basically. So it's kind of like dividing the back of the front end from the front of the front end, which is very exciting.
Justin requests refactoring, for example, bundling a group of states under a new parent.
Yep, talked about
I think
this.
that kind of goes to what we were talking about earlier. Yeah, with being able to group them and pop them in there. I was initially wondering whether he was talking about getting it to do it automatically for you. I was like, no, that would take quite some AI.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Stately Copilot. I'm here for it.
Yeah. It's a dangerous idea. Kevin says export to multiple languages.
We were actually briefly talking about that today, both with inline implementations, just expressing code in there. But like, yeah, the idea is that right now you could ship it out as JSON, and ideally, like, we would have interpreters for multiple different language targets like Python, Go, C#, whatever. And you just feed in your JSON and it'll interpret that and run the logic for you. So this is definitely something that, at least I've been thinking about for many years now.
Yes, I've got a bleeding heart for having state charts implemented in .NET, being able to consume my machines that way. Oh, that would be chef's kiss for me.
You and many others. It's definitely a popular request.
Good.
Yeah, we've certainly had
There's
that before.
dozens of us.
Sean says, well done, team. I know it's a beta and this is not a critique, but more of a hope for the future. Low-code tools for developers should allow us to jump seamlessly between the, depends how you like to say this, GUI or GUI, and the code itself. This is really hard to get right, but state charts are the perfect candidate.
Yeah, I saw the VS Code extension.
Yeah, and I want to say Matt did a fantastic job. Like, at first we were like, yeah, this is a crazy idea. I have no idea if it'll work. And Matt was like, you know what, let me try it. And, he was able to get it working pretty well. So I think that we could, do even better with that and be one of the first tools to actually achieve this bidirectional editing with app logic.
Totally. It feels like a holy grail, but it sort of didn't seem that way when we were coding it. I think just the luck of how our API is designed, where it's mostly a static object, and the tools that we were using, it feels like it's a pretty good candidate as well.
Now, this is going back to actually something we discussed earlier, so I'll just run through it very quickly. But James also said reusable guards. And I would really recommend going on and looking at James's tweet on Twitter, because he actually does a loom explaining exactly what he's after, and it's really interesting. So I think it's a good one to check out. And finally, last but absolutely not least, we had Martin say this, and I can't even remember what this was in reference to at this point. Oh, it was in reference to the previous one. Or give it autocomplete like events and actions have. So we already discussed that. In the same vein, could be awesome to be able to batch rename them as well.
Totally.
Kind of like refactoring in the IDE. That'll be cool.
Yeah, like Command D, select all the events of that name and change them. Yeah, that's such an obvious thing to do. Yeah, we never discussed that, but it's a great idea.
We really need the keyboard actor.
Yeah.
Now I'm just going to have a quick little scroll through the comments and check if we had any more questions. Lots of great comments, though. Really appreciate.
One in the Office Hours channel from Arthur, which is a small thing that I use quite a bit and would be lovely in the editor, is tag support. So support for when you have tags on different states and and you see them all on the thing and you can add and remove them. Yeah, we just haven't done that yet. Actually, that was in the designs, but I think it was just something that we cut for the MVP. So yeah, that should be one that we do next for sure.
Yeah, and also like design features, even based on the tags, like color all the states with this tag red or green or whatever. Lots of ideas there.
Now, if anyone has any more questions that they want to ask, you can ask us in the YouTube comments. You can ask us on Twitter. You can ask us in our Discord, in the Office Hours channel. Anyone on the team got anything else that you wanted to share? Anything about what you've been working on this week? I guess we've mostly just been working on getting the beta out the door and letting everyone know about it.
I've got one of John's comments just from the chat that I'd like to bring up. This is regarding something we talked about a while ago, which was prose style for events and that sort of thing. Syntax highlighting in the XState extension. So like Eric was getting excited about this too. Different colors for states, events, actions, and contexts. Like just in the editor, like syntax highlighting. It's totally something we can do. We have all the information for it. And yeah, that would be kind of cool. I like that idea.
That would be epic. And I volunteer as tribute to be lead test for that, to make sure that it works for my VS Code cyberpunk theme, because that's very important.
That's right. Yeah,
love to see that.
Sounds good. I mean, it's totally possible. It's just I've never done anything like that, but I know from reading the docs that it's possible.
Yeah, and that would be very cool. And one other thing that we wanted to mention this week is that, David, you are going to be on the very popular Learn with Jason show on February 24th.
Yeah, that's right. So I was on the show about, I want to say 2 years ago, and I was just demonstrating something really simple with XState at the time. So now I'm excited to actually show off new features of XState and also show off the visual editor and maybe the VS Code extension as well, and just show everyone how they could get started with it and visually create their state machines. So I'm super excited about this. It's on February 24th, so mark your calendars.
It will be streaming live on Twitch, I believe, at the URL that I've just added to the screen, which is learnwithjason.dev/visually-create-state-machines. And I think it's been really cool to watch your previous one and then this one back to back. And it's just going to blow people's minds.
Yeah, for sure. Hopefully.
And on that note, I think things have, we've had a very absolute jam-packed feedback episode today. And so I think we will call it a day. I think we've had a very long week. I mean, I know it's the afternoon for us over in Europe, and the Americans have the rest of the day left to go.
Oh, we're just getting
feeling
started.
the need for the weekend. It was lovely having you all here today. Thank you for participating and sharing your feedback and your questions and your comments. We always really appreciate it. If you have anything else that you want us to talk about, if you want to ask us any questions ahead of next week, you can do so by joining our Discord and asking on the Office Hours channel. You can tweet us, you can leave us a comment here, and we will make sure to pick it up and get that answered. And I'd say that is all for this week. So we look forward to seeing you again, same time again next week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everyone.
Bye.
Bye, y'all.